I know for 100% they won't find anything. Well, I'm actually pretty happy about that because it's been about 3 months. I've been asking for them, and it's just been delayed.
In the latest twist in the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, stepfather Daniel Martell has made a statement that stopped many people in their tracks. He claims with absolute certainty that cadaver dogs will not find anything. Think about that for a moment. Before the dogs even step into the woods, before the search begins, Daniel says he knows the outcome. Is this the confidence of an innocent man desperate to clear his name, or is it a denial so strong that it only raises more suspicion? For months, the public has speculated, theories have exploded online, and investigators have quietly prepared their next moves. Now, with cadaver dogs finally being deployed, Daniel insists the search is nothing more than a formality, a step that will rule things out and silence the rumors. But his words leave us with a chilling question. How can he be so sure? When Daniel Martell sat down for this latest interview, he did not hesitate. Before the first question was even finished, he interrupted with his declaration, "I know for 100% they won't find anything." These words have echoed through social media and news outlets, sparking heated debates. To the casual listener, it sounds like the statement of a man who is utterly confident, someone who has nothing to hide. But to others, it sounds almost rehearsed, like a defense built in advance of the search. And when it comes to a case as delicate and tragic as the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, every word carries weight. Why is this so significant? Because cadaver dogs are not just symbolic. They are one of the most reliable tools in the search for human remains. Their noses can detect scents that technology cannot. If the children were on that property, or if something connected to them was hidden there, the dogs would almost certainly indicate it. And yet, Daniel does not say, "I hope they won't find anything." He does not say, "I believe they won't." He says he knows, with complete certainty, the result of a search that hasn't even started. That choice of words is what unsettles many people. Daniel attempts to explain his certainty. He points out that he himself has been asking for cadaver dogs for months. In his mind, their arrival is proof that investigators are exhausting every possibility. He claims that RCMP has already used drones, helicopters, ground teams, even advanced scanning technology. 70,000 drone photographs, he says, were taken and reviewed. Specialized teams combed through the woods, even with ATVs and side-by-sides. And according to Daniel, all they found were traces of wildlife. A beaver here, a coyote there. No sign of Lilly and Jack. To him, the cadaver dogs are simply the last piece of a puzzle that will show the same answer. Nothing. But let's pause on that. Daniel is not just expressing relief. He's taking ownership of the narrative. He mentions numbers, technologies, and details that few people outside of the investigation would recite so readily. He describes the search process almost as if he were an insider. Most stepfathers in his position might speak about their heartbreak, their desperation, their constant hope. Daniel instead catalogs the RCMP's efforts like a witness giving a report. Is that the behavior of someone trying to stay involved and helpful, or of someone anxiously keeping track, making sure the public knows just how thorough the search has been? There is also the question of timing. Why now? Why is Daniel suddenly so vocal about cadaver dogs, just as RCMP prepares to deploy them? Some observers believe he is trying to get ahead of the story, to frame the outcome before it even happens. By insisting early on that nothing will be found, he positions himself to say, "See, I told you so," when the dogs leave without results. But the risk of that tactic is obvious. If anything is discovered, his certainty will look less like innocence and more like knowledge. Another detail that caught attention is his repeated reference to polygraph tests. Daniel insists that he, Malehya, and his mother all passed, and he even volunteers to take another round with different examiners. On the surface, this might look like the stance of a man desperate to clear suspicion. Yet criminologists often note that repeating one's innocence over and over, unprompted, can sometimes indicate the opposite, a fear that no one believes you, so you must keep saying it. Daniel doesn't just assert his innocence, he almost begs the world to take note of it. And then comes the emotional contrast. When asked about social media, Daniel lashes out at the circus, frustrated that people analyze every movement of his hands and every word out of his mouth. He complains about AI-generated pictures and theories, calling them ridiculous. In that moment, we glimpse not just exhaustion, but irritation, a man angry at how he is being perceived, rather than solely focused on finding 2 missing children. So we are left with 2 interpretations. Perhaps Daniel is exactly what he claims to be, a man wrongfully judged, clinging to hope, begging investigators to use every possible tool so he can finally be cleared. Or perhaps his certainty is too strong, too absolute, the kind of confidence that suggests knowledge about what will not be found. Either way, his statement has raised the stakes, because when the cadaver dogs finally enter those woods, they are not just searching for Lilly and Jack. They are testing Daniel's words, and with them, his credibility. When Daniel talks about the RCMP investigation, it almost sounds like he is reading from an official operations log. He lists the equipment, the technology, even the number of photographs. 70,000 drone photos were taken. He recalls ATVs, Argos, dive teams, helicopters, side-by-sides. He knows that advanced scanning equipment detected nothing but a beaver and a coyote. These are not casual details. They are precise, almost rehearsed, as if he has been studying and memorizing the timeline of every search conducted on the property. To some, this comes across as thoroughness. After all, a stepfather who desperately wants to prove his innocence might indeed keep track of every measure taken, every resource deployed. He might cling to those statistics as evidence that no stone has been left unturned. But to others, Daniel's detailed recitation feels unnatural. Why is he so invested in reminding the public of what investigators did or didn't find? Why does he emphasize the nothingness of each search result, almost as if he is trying to preempt any suspicion? Criminal psychologists often point out that guilty or complicit individuals sometimes over-explain. They volunteer information that was never asked for, hoping to sound transparent, but in doing so, they raise new questions. Daniel wasn't prompted to list 70,000 drone photographs. He wasn't asked to recall which animals were detected by scanning technology. Yet he offers these facts willingly and repeats them, as if repeating them might make them more convincing. Another striking moment is his remark about the property size. Daniel points out that his lot is only 2 acres, but then questions whether the dogs will be used on the full 8.5 surrounding acres. He even estimates how long it would take to comb that land on foot, probably a couple of weeks. Again, this is not the language of a grieving stepfather. This is the language of someone calculating logistics, thinking like an investigator, not like a parent holding on to fading hope. And then there is his repeated reference to polygraph tests. Daniel stresses that he, Malehya, and his mother already passed. He suggests doing another round, this time with new examiners. On one hand, it could be interpreted as desperation, an almost frantic desire to convince the public of his innocence. On the other hand, it could be interpreted as insecurity. People who are truly innocent often do not feel the need to constantly prove it. They expect the truth to emerge on its own. But Daniel keeps circling back, insisting on the same point. We didn't do anything. What stands out here is the tension between certainty and defensiveness. Daniel insists he knows the outcome of the cadaver dog search, yet he also seems deeply unsettled by the way he is perceived. He talks about filling notebooks with information for the RCMP. He mentions meeting investigators 3 times a week, calling, texting, offering small details. In his words, he is doing everything he can. But does this sound like cooperation or control? Is he helping the investigation, or is he trying to manage it? The more he talks, the more the lines blur. Daniel wants the public to see him as transparent, as someone begging for more scrutiny because he has nothing to hide. But the very intensity of that desire is what keeps fueling suspicion. He does not simply wait for the RCMP to finish their work. He inserts himself into the process, reminding everyone of what has been done, what will be done, and what the outcome must be. This obsession with shaping the narrative may come from genuine frustration, but it may also signal something darker. People who fear discovery sometimes build walls of words around themselves, hoping those walls will protect them when the truth is revealed. Daniel's walls are built from statistics, technologies, and assurances. Yet behind those walls, the haunting absence of Lilly and Jack remains. And until answers emerge, every statement, every number, every calculated detail will be dissected for hidden meaning. As the interview continues, the spotlight shifts from Daniel's facts and figures to something more personal, his emotions. When asked about the toll of the past months, Daniel's voice lowers. He admits he is not doing well, though he says he is doing better than at the start. He describes each day as physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausting. And yet, he insists, every morning he wakes up with new hope, forcing himself forward. To anyone watching, this is a familiar refrain, the portrait of a man clinging to survival during an unimaginable nightmare. But soon, the mask slips. The conversation turns to social media, and Daniel cannot hide his frustration. He calls it a circus, angrily lamenting that strangers dissect his every gesture, every movement of his hands, every facial expression. He is particularly irritated by AI-generated images and wild speculation, dismissing them as ridiculous. In those moments, his grief is overtaken by something else: resentment. Rather than focusing solely on the missing children, he focuses on how he is being judged. It is an understandable reaction. Few people could endure the scrutiny he faces, but it also exposes attention. The public expects sorrow. What they see instead is defensiveness. This defensiveness grows sharper when Daniel is pressed about the possibility of the cadaver dogs finding something. He cuts the question off quickly. No, because I didn't do anything. I know Malehya didn't do anything. I know my mother didn't do anything. He repeats the denial, grouping all three together as if to shield them beneath the same umbrella of innocence. On the surface, this sounds like loyalty. But to skeptics, it feels rehearsed, almost too quick, too absolute. Once again, his insistence seems to raise more questions than it silences. Then comes perhaps the most haunting moment of the interview. Asked whether he still believes the children are alive, Daniel answers, "Yes. I hope so. That's all we have." Hope, the words are simple, but they hang heavy in the air. Hope is all that remains, he says, even as months have passed without a single confirmed sighting, without any sign of Lilly or Jack. For some, this is heartbreaking, a father figure refusing to let go, clinging to the possibility of a miracle. For others, it feels detached, as though hope has become a script rather than an emotion. The contrast is striking. When Daniel talks about the RCMP's technology, his tone is precise, detailed, confident. But when he speaks about hope, his words falter. It is almost as if the facts and numbers are his shield, while the subject of the children themselves leaves him exposed. Instead of dwelling on memories of Lilly and Jack, he speaks in generalities, about school buses passing, about teachers and friends missing them, about the sadness in the community. Rarely does he paint a vivid picture of the children themselves, their personalities, their laughter, their lives. To some viewers, that absence is as telling as any statistic, and so we are left with conflicting impressions. On one hand, Daniel is visibly worn down, a man exhausted by grief, clinging to hope, and desperate to end the constant scrutiny. On the other, he is defensive, irritated, and oddly detached from the very children at the heart of the case. His words are layered with contradictions, expressions of hope wrapped in frustration, denials framed by certainty, grief shadowed by anger. What is the truth? Is Daniel a stepfather pushed to the edge by suspicion and cruelty, speaking awkwardly but honestly? Or is his frustration with social media a distraction, a way to shift focus from questions he cannot answer? Until the cadaver dogs finish their search, the only certainty is that Daniel's words will continue to be dissected, scrutinized, and doubted. And every contradiction will be weighed against the one thing no one can forget: 2 children are still missing. One of the most striking patterns in Daniel Martell's interviews is his constant need to shape the story. He doesn't simply answer questions, he frames them, reframes them, and steers the conversation toward his chosen themes. Again and again, he emphasizes innocence, repetition, and certainty. He wants the public to see him not just as cooperative, but as the central witness, the one providing clarity in a sea of speculation. But in doing so, he risks something else entirely: the appearance of control. Take his insistence on cadaver dogs. He reminds the audience that he himself requested them months ago, as if to suggest that their arrival now is his victory. By placing himself at the center of the decision, Daniel subtly implies that if nothing is found, the credit, or vindication, belongs to him. But this is not how investigations work. The RCMP did not deploy dogs because Daniel asked. They did it because investigators know the public expects every possible measure. Daniel's narrative, however, is different. In his version, the dogs are there because he demanded it, and their inevitable failure will prove his point. This is a risky strategy. When someone guarantees an outcome before it happens, they raise the stakes dramatically. If the cadaver dogs find nothing, Daniel can claim foresight. But if they do uncover evidence, any trace, any small item connected to Lilly or Jack, his certainty will collapse. What once sounded like confidence will suddenly look like knowledge that he should not have had. In this sense, Daniel has cornered himself, placing his credibility entirely on the line. It also reveals something deeper about his mindset. People under extreme suspicion often respond in one of 2 ways. They retreat, saying little, or they push forward, trying to control the narrative. Daniel has chosen the latter. He does not leave space for ambiguity. He does not say, "We'll see," or "I hope." He insists on absolutes, 100%, nothing, "We didn't do anything." These absolutes may comfort him, but to the public they sound like rehearsed defenses, carefully constructed to leave no cracks. Another example is his relationship with polygraphs. He doesn't just mention that he and his family passed, he insists on repeating it, and even volunteers to take more tests with new examiners. At first glance, this appears as unshakable confidence. But it also suggests that Daniel believes proof must be constantly reinforced, as though one test is never enough. The more he pushes this narrative, the more some wonder. If he were truly innocent, why the relentless campaign to convince us? Wouldn't the facts eventually speak for themselves? There is also his tone when discussing the investigation. Rather than expressing gratitude for the RCMP's efforts, or sorrow that so much has been done without answers, he speaks of the search like an accountant tallying receipts, numbers, technologies, outcomes, each detail stacked up to build his wall of nothing. But walls built on words can crumble quickly, and Daniel seems to know this, which is why he keeps reinforcing them with repetition, hoping they will hold against the tide of suspicion. The upcoming cadaver dog search may therefore be more than just another investigative step. For the public, it has become a test of Daniel's credibility. If nothing is found, he will seize it as validation. If something is discovered, his certainty will haunt him. In either case, his attempt to control the narrative has ensured that all eyes will be watching him as closely as the dogs watch the ground. This is the paradox of Daniel Martell. By speaking so much, by insisting on shaping the story, he has ensured that his every word will be measured against reality. If he is innocent, his strategy may eventually clear his name. If he is not, His own words may become the evidence that undoes him. And with cadaver dogs finally entering the woods, the moment of truth is closer than ever. Cadaver dogs are not just animals with extraordinary noses. In high-profile cases, like the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, they become symbols, living representations of truth-seeking that no amount of words can silence. When Daniel Martell declares with absolute certainty that the dogs will not find anything, he is not only challenging their effectiveness, but also challenging what they represent, the possibility of answers that no human testimony can erase. For investigators, the dogs are a final sweep of the landscape, a scientific measure layered on top of drones, helicopters, and advanced scanning technology. But for the public, they are something more primal. People trust dogs in ways they don't trust humans. A cadaver dog cannot be bribed, cannot be persuaded, cannot be swayed by media speculation. It reacts to scent and only scent. Its alert carries no agenda, no bias. That is why Daniel's certainty feels so heavy. He is not just predicting the outcome of a search. He is predicting the silence of a tool that has uncovered countless truths in cases around the world. The weight of this step is also emotional. The community has lived for months in uncertainty, clinging to scraps of information, hoping for resolution. The arrival of cadaver dogs signals something different, the acknowledgement that investigators are preparing for the worst. It is a painful reality, one that shifts the focus from rescue to recovery. For families and neighbors, it is almost unbearable to imagine. Yet Daniel insists it is merely procedural, something to quiet online rumors. His framing may soothe himself, but for others, it feels dismissive of the gravity of what the dogs symbolize. This is why public reaction has been so polarized. Some view Daniel's certainty as defiance, the stance of a man wrongly accused, who welcomes every tool that will finally clear his name. Others view it as arrogance, or worse, as knowledge disguised as confidence. In either interpretation, his words tie his credibility directly to the outcome. If the dogs fail to find evidence, he will claim vindication. If they succeed, his insistence will become one of the most suspicious statements of the entire investigation. And Daniel knows this. He has already laid the groundwork, suggesting that the delay in bringing dogs was strategic, that the search is about optics rather than substance. He positions himself as the reasonable one, tired of ridiculous speculation, frustrated by social media, and grateful only that the chapter might finally be closed. Yet in that positioning lies the paradox. Cadaver dogs cannot close a chapter. They can only reveal what is there or confirm what is not. They do not write endings, they uncover truths. The presence of cadaver dogs also heightens the pressure on the RCMP. With 70,000 drone photos, advanced scans, and ground searches yielding no results, the public is hungry for closure. If the dogs return empty-handed, critics may accuse the investigation of stalling, wasting time, or focusing in the wrong place. If the dogs discover something, the pressure will turn to why it took so long to bring them in. Either way, the search is not just about the property. It is about credibility, both for the investigators and for Daniel himself. In the end, the dogs symbolize more than just a search. They symbolize truth in its rawest form, stripped of speculation and stripped of narrative. And for a man like Daniel, who has worked tirelessly to shape the story in his favor, that may be the most frightening prospect of all, because once the dogs begin their work, no amount of certainty, no polygraph result, no list of technologies or statistics will matter. Either the scent is there, or it is not. And in that binary truth, Daniel's words will finally be tested. For investigators, cadaver dogs are not about speculation, they are about evidence. For the public, they are a symbol of truth, one that no amount of words can overwrite. And for Daniel, they are now the ultimate test of credibility. If nothing is found, he may claim vindication. But if anything is uncovered, his insistence that 100% nothing would appear not as confidence, but as foreknowledge. That is the dangerous weight of his words. This case has dragged the community through months of pain, unanswered questions, and growing suspicion. Every interview, every statement, every press release feels like a battle over truth. But soon, the spotlight may shift from words to actions, from speculation to evidence. Because once the dogs finish their work, the outcome will speak louder than any interview ever could. What do you think? Is Daniel's certainty the confidence of a man who knows he is innocent? Or the slip of someone who knows too much? If you've followed this story from the beginning, you know how vital every detail is. Stay with us as we continue to uncover new angles, break down official reports, and challenge the narratives that shape public opinion. Subscribe to True Child Cases for ongoing updates, deeper analysis, and the untold truths behind Canada's most haunting mysteries.